Hi there, this is Sheena Rowlands and thank you for joining me today as I share my Mixed Media Frenzy YouTube hop layout. This month we're all lifting the fabulous Julie Taylor, who I actually know in person, a wonderful lady and an excellent mixed media artist. So that's her layout on the right. I'm keeping it there for inspiration while I go through my stash, and I'm picking out some Vicky Boutin papers to match that photo of my daughter in a Japanese restaurant. So I'm following her layout quite closely. She's got stars in the background, so I dig out the star papers too. So I place my photo in a frame and the title on the cardstock just as a base, while I go back through the papers and I cut out the coloured portions that I would prefer. I'm looking at orange, pinks and reds to go with the background in this photograph. And I'm just going through this starburst. This is the Let's Wander Day Tripping paper by Vicky Boutin. I couldn't believe I'd still got a whole sheet of this, so this was perfect for me to start cutting into first. I'm not totally sure where I'm going with it, so what I'll do is I'll cut a number of pieces and then I'll make a decision a little later on. I go back through the papers just to see if there's anything I've missed, and I actually think I might add this dark pink in, so I just chop into it and cut a couple of long triangles just to add to the pile, so that when I do make a final decision on the paper, they're all there. I just check with the colour wheel. Yes, I like the colours that I've picked. So this is a piece of thick white cardstock which I've added clear gesso to. I've stamped some Tim Holtz oxide inks on my messy mat on the left of me there, as I'm left-handed. And I'm going in very pale to start with down the centre of the paper, very similar to the position that Julie Taylor had on her original layout. I don't know why I have to go in so pale first. I get a little bit hesitant with mixed media. Sometimes I just need to remember it's a piece of cardstock. And in reality, everything can be repeated. So I'm just going in with some kitchen roll there, just dabbing to get rid of the water pools. You can already see that the paper's still wrinkling even with the gesso. I'm adding so much water to it, but in the long run, I'm not that bothered about that at all. I'm trying to keep the blocks of colour separate but together, if that makes sense. I want to be able to see them. I don't want to make it too muddy. So I am going to let it dry a little bit in between layers of paint. But I'm actually enjoying the process. I get a bit bolder the longer I add things to it. And as I say, this is just oxide ink off the messy mat with a little bit of water. So the ink's now dry on the background, and I'm coming back in with the pieces of paper I cut at the beginning. I'm deciding which ones I want where. Like Julie, I'm going to put 3 either side. So I'm just looking at the colour mixes really. Having cut them in advance, it is making this process a little bit simpler, but I'm still taking a little bit of time just to make the final decision. Now the papers are lying against the mixed media on the background. And I think I've nearly made my final choice, and I'm just going to cut them to make them a little bit of a better shape so they look more like a bit like a sunburst, and trim them in the centre where they'll be underneath the picture. And I'm definitely happy that bright pink definitely needs to be in there, and I think that's an orange one at the top. So I've taken them off camera, I've distressed around the edges, and I've sewn with my sewing machine some black lines down the middle. And I'm now looking for some stars, so I've cut some out of the vellum from Vicky Boutin, and I've used the star punches you've just seen there to take some out of some of the spare bits of paper. I'm just going to add a little bit of more mixed media to this layout, as I feel like it wasn't showing on that right hand side, which would be below the photograph. So now I've let that dry, I'm just going to add a few splatters. They're very small, just in the corresponding colours, just to break up the rest of the cardstock. This is very therapeutic to do, and it's great to just use up what was left on the messy mat to add those bits in. Now that's dry, I've got a stencil. This is a Paige Taylor Evans stencil, and I'm going to continue with the same colours as I've used before, and using a finger dauber I'm going to add a few stars running down over the mixed media. I believe in the original Julie used texture paste by the looks of it. I've been looking at the picture closely to have a look at all the things that she's used, but as she's a master of this, there's so many techniques that I probably don't even recognise. So with the different colours, I'm coming back in with the daubers, just adding a few stars running down over the colours. I'm really pleased the way that those look. As you see, I dab off the daubers after I've gone in the ink, just so that they're not too bright. And I just wanted like a mottled effect. So some of them are brighter than others, but as I say, it's all part of the background, so I'm quite happy. So I've been back to Julie's layout just to have another look at it, and I want to add some stamping. So these are some stamps that I've recently purchased. They're Art by Marlene, the exclusive textures, and there's the one with dots on, so I've just inked it up with some black ink. I've done it in a couple of places, then I take it off the acrylic block and I actually just do it with my hands, so I don't get a full stamp, so it's just patchy, which is what I wanted. So I'm going to lay the starburst back on, and I had a bit of a brainwave. I'd got some chopsticks that we bought on a trip to China in 2019. Well, this is a picture of my daughter in an Asian restaurant. So using a hacksaw, I cut a pair of chopsticks in half, because obviously I couldn't cross them over underneath the photo, as it would be too bulky. In fact, even with the chopsticks it is quite bulky, but I thought, why not? I think it went with the shape of the starburst that's going on, and I just thought it was a fun element that I could add. So I'm just going to get everything into position. I think I actually make a couple of the starburst pieces a little bit thinner. Oh yes, there I go. Just so now that I can see them all together, I'm just changing them a little bit. So you may have seen that there was a bowl of noodles that appeared. It's a die cut from the Let's Wander Vicky Booted range, which I hadn't planned to use originally, but the green is such a good green for the match of the sofa in the photograph that I thought it might be a fun element to add. So I'm just trying to get everything into place. I've got these burst pieces stuck down with foam down the centre so that I can actually roll the edges up a little bit. And I've added red tape to the back of the chopsticks because I think it's going to take a little bit to make that stick. I do take some of the foam off some of the bits of the starburst that are underneath the chopsticks, just to make it as flat as I can. So I start to stick those down, and I just move the starburst bits a little bit just so I can get the chopsticks to look like they are a hole underneath the photograph. And obviously we know that they're not, but that's another story. So I stick my photo down, it's on quite a bit of foam to get it to go over the top of those chopsticks, so a little bit of a pile of foam there on the back, but I'm quite happy with that. And I just tweak the edges of the starburst, bringing them up as they're only attached down the centre. So I bring in all the stars that I cut and punched earlier, and just using Julie's layout as a reference, I add them around the photograph and the starburst, just tucking them in places. I haven't got quite the size range that she had, but I'm quite happy with that. Just putting my title into position so that I can figure out where to put some of the stars around it. So I love doing the final tweaking of a layout. I can feel that it's really coming together now. I did cut a few stars in yellows and greens to match the die cut, but in fact I do remove those and stick just with the pinks, oranges and reds in the end. So I'm adding some on top of the starburst bits, and some tucked in underneath. So I stick those down off camera and I just add in my title. I did actually trim some of the white off the outside of this. The word was Be Awesome from Vicky Booting, but I've just trimmed it to Awesome. And I'm going to bring in some little alphas, and I'm adding the word food. My daughter won a voucher on IG to eat at this restaurant. We didn't even know it existed, so it was a lovely experience for us both, so certainly worth documenting in this layout. So I'm just adding some stars around the title, just on a bit of foam, just to finish this off. You might notice that I've tweaked the die cut, I've cut the chopsticks off and I've laid them across the bowl. So here's the full image of the layout. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like what you see, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I'll be playing along next month with the mixed media friendly girls. So please hop around and see all the wonderful interpretations of this layout. Thanks again. Bye now.